Hello, I'm Brenda Roberts, and this is Journey. Do you feel the shift? It is happening now, and our challenge on this journey during this accelerated time is to maintain our balance, integrate the higher frequencies of energy, and focus our thoughts on our preferred reality. For indeed, we are the creators of our own reality. Remember, you chose to be here for the ending of one cycle and the beginning of yet another journey. The past is history, the future a mystery. All we have is now, which is a gift from Spirit, and why we call it the present.
Welcome to Journey. Journey is being brought to you from Spokane, Washington, where we're going to be discussing a new movement that is affecting all cities, Seattle, San Francisco, as well as the whole planet. And that is going green, living green, and being better caretakers of this wonderful planet while we're on this journey. With me today is Dave Sanders, Community Coordinator in Spokane for the Community Building, and Rod Butler of Zeck and Butler Architects. And we're going to be discussing how even you as a homeowner or a company owner can go green. So Dave and Rod, just jump in any time, but what does green mean?
Well, good morning. I guess to me, green means that you're connected with a larger picture than just the economic bottom line, considering not only the economics, but the environmental concerns, and also people's concerns that you have inside your building, their health, their air quality, that type of thing. Recognizing that I've heard the phrase triple bottom line, that you get better production, and workers are happier, you have less downtime, if they're healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I might just add on to that, Brenda, that we really see it as kind of an integrated approach where the building owners, the operators, and all of the design team, as well as the tenants that come on, are really engaged together to solve those kind of design problems. And really from a building standpoint, we look at those buildings to be environmentally responsible, profitable for the owner still, and really healthy places to live. So those are really kind of our bottom line.
And that's sort of the true meaning of this sustainability issue, too, isn't it? Sustaining healthy lifestyles as well as sustaining the bottom line and return on those investments in buildings.
Sure. Well, it's a balance of all of those things. Certainly we need to have healthier places for people to live and work, but we need buildings that use half the energy they use now. We need to use less water. We need to think about all of the impacts on the planet.
Now, Dave, from a standpoint of this community building in Spokane that I understand is going to be quite a model for across the country, explain to me how that sort of came about.
Well, actually, we're starting a new phase of community building. The community building itself has been in existence since 2001, when we renovated some older buildings in Spokane to house nonprofit organizations, trying to create some union between social justice and environmental justice. And it had really come about with one person's vision who had been a public defender all of his life and recognized that there was a real disparity between those that had money and those that didn't have money. So he created a nonprofit law firm. And from that, recognized that there was more to it and created this building so he could house and subsidize different nonprofit groups. So we've been in operation 5 years, and the building next to us became available, and we are just full all the time. We have people wanting to join us. We have our conference rooms available to the community, and they're just overbooked. And so we took the step forward, bought this other building, and decided to renovate it. And in doing that, we decided to take it a step further with our greening of the building, the way we constructed it. We scratched on the surface a little bit with the first two buildings, but now have decided to take it one step further and create a model that hopefully other people will follow an example and see that it does work and can be done.
Now, I've been in the community building, and it's really beautifully done inside. There's local art, beautiful photographs, and so there's a constant, I think, drawing in of the community as you walk around, plus a room that I think every company should have, the meditation room, a place where you can go contemplate maybe, the hecticness of your day. When you talked about how you scratched the surface with the first building, what did you do a little differently even with that one? And then, maybe moving to you, Rod, to talk about this next building that you're more involved in. What more are you going to do in the greening of that renovation?
Well, I guess that scratching of the surface with the first building, we used its much existing structure was there, and places where we would deconstruct, if you will. We would save the material, reuse the material. We tried to find the most efficient furnaces that we could, and also with the lighting to use fluorescent lighting and limit the amount of light that we had to add to it to create offices all on the exterior of the building, and put everybody with a window and that type of thing.
With a natural lighting then, actually.
Yes, yeah. It just creates a better environment. And then with those, we created relights so that offices on the exterior building, the light then floods into the center part of the building. And tried to create it open sense. So instead of hallways, you come out of your office door like you're on your front porch and you're in the community. And we've seen some real benefits from that with the different organizations. There's been a lot of collaboration. It has become a family with the different tenants.
I see that too, just walking around the few times I have been there. They are collecting in the hallways and talking, and it does. It has a feel like if you wanted to, just live there, it would be nice. The photoelectric cells on the rooftop, explain how that came about.
Well, that was another one that we'd hoped to make a statement with. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we've got pretty cheap hydroelectric power. We recognize that was built with federal money and it's a subsidized process, and really we're getting cheap power at the bottom line, but there's an environmental impact to our rivers and to other things. So we wanted to put up the photovoltaics to make a statement that there's other renewable energies out there. It wasn't something based strictly on the dollar value or return for a dollar, recognizing that it's going to take a lot of years to get payback on that. If we were in California or New York or Hawaii, payback would be a lot less. It would make a lot more sense, but it's more about the way we live and the way we use our energy. It's just about the dollar return on it.
Now, do those cells then actually run that whole community building?
They don't run the whole building. We get about a little bit less than 10% of our electrical needs from the array. We're hooked into the grid system so that when we're not there, meter turns backwards. And in Washington State now we have an incentive program. So they'll pay a premium for whatever power we're able to produce. That's available to businesses, homeowners, anyone that wants to apply to the program. We're seeing some wind energy and other things happening in the state. There's also, I heard recently, I think there's going to be a factory moving into the Moses Lake area, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to create some more panels, so it's bringing industry.
And Rod, you're primarily involved now in this new building, which I've seen, which is, like you said, it's just basic structure left, so you're starting really from the ground up. What are you going to do differently in that building and improve even more greening than the former one?
Sure. Well, thanks, Brenda. We're going to try to enhance a lot of the things that Dave really got started on the first building. The photovoltaic panel, we're going to expand pretty drastically on the size of that. We're going to have, I think, the largest photovoltaic array in the Pacific Northwest will be 136 panels. It will provide 10% of the energy for the building, similar to what Dave said. We took a pretty big step, I think, in increasing the energy efficiency of the building. We went back and upgraded the envelope, so the envelope is really well insulated. And then we're using a open-loop ground source heat pump system, which will save about 40% of the energy that would normally be used in it. So we were able to make a case to the Department of Ecology that this was an environmental benefit, and then get a non-consumptive water right to use that water. So that was really a major step. And going through that process means that other buildings throughout the state now can use that same technology, which wasn't really available in the state of Washington wasn't allowed until this project laid that groundwork. Overall, we're going to save half the energy. We have the lighting systems that Dave described. We've kind of taken that a step further now, where every tenant in the building will have a little remote control that they can adjust the lighting levels at their own workstation. These lights are also tied in with a little photovoltaic sensor that senses the daylight coming in, so they automatically adjust. And then they all turn themselves off automatically when there's a sense that no one's in the space. So should be a pretty drastic piece and really take advantage of the daylight. Similarly, we reuse structure just like Dave did in the community building, and that's really been, I think, an enhancement. We're using the LEED rating system in the building partly to really demonstrate to the public in a real measurable way the things that we've accomplished. So part of the goal in this building is to not just do those things for the public, but to make a real public demonstration so other people can come into the building and see things that they can do real specifically on their projects.
Now, those are a lot of things that the people that are going to be working in the building are going to benefit from. I know for a fact if I could have adjusted fluorescent lighting years ago, I would have been a much happier employee in some of the buildings I've worked in. What else might be looked at from your standpoint that would not create a situation as far as materials? Because I do know that certain carpet fibers, certain materials that are used, even certain paint, off-gas,
Sure.
You're looking at all that as well.
Right. Indoor environmental air quality was really a large issue, and certainly there's a history of sick building syndrome and Legionnaire's disease, and a whole host of things of people being exposed to viruses and molds and volatile organic compounds. So we know that there are about 17 million people in the United States that have asthma, and there are about 40 million people that have allergies. So we can expect to see those in every building that we go into. So we did a number of things. One, by kind of starting over in the building, as you described. We removed any products that had any built-up contaminants in them. We now are putting in a HVAC system, or a fresh air and ventilation system, that as we construct it, it's sealed off every day so we don't have dust entering the system. So we make sure that we interject fresh air. There's fresh air interjected into every space at a higher volume than you might normally expect to see. And we are doing some of the basic things, I think, that are pretty well known, where we are using carpets, paints, adhesives, and sealants, all that really are produced without volatile organic compounds. Those compounds came about because they help the paints and the various materials dry faster and cure faster, but they had some unintended consequences. So we hope that the building will not have that new carpets or that new car smell, which is, the first sense that you really are getting those volatile organic compounds.
Now, how would a homeowner maybe that wants to look at doing remodeling in their home, or someone that owns their own business, find these specific non-volatile substances and adhesives in carpet? I mean, are they well advertised now or not?
Well, I think the concepts are fairly well known, at least on the commercial scale. They're known pretty well in the design community, to a lesser extent, I think, in the construction community. Locally, we have the Eco Depot, run by a fellow named Bruce Gage, who really focuses on those kinds of products that are readily available to buy. More manufacturers are coming out with them all the time. So there are sources to go to find out those interior pieces.
Imagine people might be able to Google like green building or green products. Do you think it's well known enough now? The internet's a wonderful source of information, truly.
Yeah, I think so. I think you could Google anything and find it these days soon.
Because I think that if we can bring this home, it would help. A lot of people realize that even some of their homes, as they're working on them, have often been a source of some of their health issues, especially the respiratory problems like we mentioned, and I can speak for that too. Dave, explain a little bit more about this. Let's get into sort of the philosophy some more too, and the vision of what a community building wants to see as people recognize it exists, and maybe the further developments. I believe there's yet another building across the street that I've heard, rumors about.
Well, really what the community building is all about is having a place for conversation. Part of that mission is that all voices need to be heard. So what we've tried to create is a community building that's accessible to other people in the community. We have conference rooms that are available during the day. There's no charge for that. After hours, any tenant can invite any group in that they want to have come in. So we've constantly got something happening in the lobby. Conference rooms are full. They're spilling over into the separate parts of the buildings with just things happening. And with the new building that we're bringing online, we're going to bring back a former art house theater that was here in town. So it will be an art house theater Thursday through Sunday, and then the rest of the time it's available for us to have presentations or group meetings, satellite downlinks, or even uplinks, if you will, creating our own program. We've also got a community-based radio station there that's all nonprofit. They're all volunteer run. Different people can make a pitch about what their program wants to be, and a community access radio that works really well. We have also purchased a building across the street from us that has been a Goodyear tire store. Fairly good-sized lot. One of the things we're trying to promote is local food production, recognizing that sustainability, as gasoline becomes more expensive, resources become more scarce, that we're going to need to start growing our food locally once again. Our grandparents did it, maybe our parents did it. So with this store, we're trying to promote a little bit more farmers market environment, hoping to potentially put a greenhouse up on the roof, raise some food then that we will sell in the restaurant that we're producing. So just trying to create a bigger picture, or getting the word out just as people drive up and down the street.
And I will state that this is on Main Street. I mean, you're in downtown Spokane, and yet approaching, having this building be more like almost a neighborhood of people that come together, work together, probably eat a lot together. You're going to have the restaurant, grow food, maybe even participate in the growing of that food itself. So this, I think, in and of itself is a pretty remarkable situation for the more inner city environment, which we're not going to, is not always friendly. You come to work, and of course you don't have the commute that we do in Seattle. But I wanted to remind people you are downtown, so this is a wonderful aspect of walking to this building. And Rod, I know that they're looking forward to having tenants and restaurants and things within the new building you're working on. From a sustainability and return on investment, are they looking at having that as being profitable to support itself? Is that
the tenants themselves?
Well, I mean, once it's finished, once you finish building with all the wonderful enhancements and all, let me ask this. Are they going to cost substantially more than, say, just a straight-up renovation would?
Well, the building itself will probably be a little bit more expensive than a standard renovation. There's some things that are strictly done for demonstration purposes and really are stretching the envelope a little bit, certainly in Spokane, about the tenants themselves are going to have a little bit different rent structure than the first building. But it's still going to be a very reasonable structure, meant to work well.
But the idea, too, is, having businesses, even in some nonprofit, but the restaurant you mentioned and the art house, that sounds like they would have a big enough draw to be pretty supportable, I would assume, the people,
yes,
that are going to come.
Yes, the restaurant will definitely be a standalone business. The chef that we've got coming in has had a really successful restaurant downtown. We're looking to expand, so it's a perfect fit for us, and his food is just really good quality food. And part of the thing kind of goes back to the sustainability piece, even with the nonprofit groups that we've got there, and they're all grant-driven. They rely on government funding or donor support. And the thing that we're trying to create here is more centered around sustainability, where people can start generating their own funds, so that in the long run, they've got a little bit better vision. They're not just funded year to year, but they can create their own economic structure. And certainly with this building, this allows us to do that. As the first building was heavily subsidized, this next one will be enough to cover the cost of the two buildings. And as we continue to grow, then we will have more money available to have a greater impact, not only just on that block, but throughout the larger, greater community. And in fact, there's a group in San Francisco, came out of Global Exchange, and they are creating this model down there, and have just recently been to Spokane, kind of collaborating, seeing what we're doing, trying to learn from our mistakes and improve upon that. Of course, it's going to be a much larger structure, but very similar. They're going to have a child care, they're going to have a fair trade retail store, they're going to have residences, green grocery store, green restaurant, very similar pieces. And it will be, of course, rent in San Francisco is much higher than it is in Spokane, so they will be able to help fund their Global Exchange project. They're a huge organization, very big, 49 employees, several $1 million a year budget. And they're creating that sustainability. They're funding it in-house, so they don't have to rely on grant. And I think that's what we need to come to.
Right. Once again, even these small groups having that broader vision, like you mentioned. And I know the community building, the original one, through the vision of Jim Sheehan, purchasing it, funds came to him, right? And then he's been sharing not only his vision, but his wealth then to do this. As we, kind of look down the road, and I think we're going to see some economic transitions. I believe they're inevitable. It sounds like that using this as a model would be for planning ahead more, moving into a time frame where companies aren't going to have to go under at the drop of a hat at the reduction of their bottom line if they could use this model. So with that in mind, Rod and Dave, is this being pretty well documented so that another company, even on a much smaller scale, might be able to just take and look and say, look, this would be a healthy environment for my employees. I'll have more sustainability. Maybe I can provide some of my own energy, if not all. That's your intent as well, because you mentioned demonstrating.
Sure. Well, the process is very well documented. Right? And the construction is also being well documented. So the process that we went through to create the actual rebuilding systems are really very well documented.
And so that might in the future become sort of a handbook for doing it the green way, too. I think that would be the best thing.
Yeah, and financially there are a lot of incentives. Our utility is about a capacity in terms of their ability that you can supply energy, particularly on the electric side. So they're providing incentives for anything that you incorporate. So there are monies out there to help support some of these improvements as you move forward. I would expect that's probably typical across the country.
You mentioned that before, too, about, the one thing that you did that now paved the way for other companies to follow suit. Can you elaborate a little on some of the monies or the areas or the groups that a smaller business owner might be able to tap into?
Sure. Vista is our local public utility, and they provide electricity and natural gas. And if you provide systems or solutions that use less energy than what's required by the state energy code, they will pay a third of the cost of those improvements. So we are able to apply, and we'll be applying for reimbursement for a number of the energy-efficient pieces of equipment that we purchased in the project. So we'll go through a process of documenting those costs to the utility, and then they will essentially return that. They also have, I mentioned the LEED process earlier, they provide a $1.25 per square foot incentive to any owner who achieves LEED certification. So our project is about 30,000 square feet, so we would get back about $45,000 from the utility.
Right.
So, and all of this is on top of your building is actually, we're going to have an operating cost that's about $10,000 less on an annual basis than the building would have had these things not happened. So all of these things begin to sort of have a cumulative effect.
I see that. And we kind of talked earlier, too, about maybe pointing the people to even Home Depot or Echo Depot or places where products are to have better awareness of what they're looking for. To have some products that are healthier for them. Are there any real specific names you could drop out as far as like wood products or fibers that we know about that are safer?
Well, we are trying to, on the wood side, we're trying to use wood that is certified as being produced and taken from sustainable forests. Wood is essentially a crop for most of the wood that's harvested. There's some part that's set aside really in reserve forests that are special kinds of wood, but the bulk of the wood is recycled about every 15 years to 20 years. Forests are harvested and recycled. So it really is much more of a crop than anything. So, but we want to buy the wood from companies that have committed to a program of protecting the streams, protecting wildlife, cutting the timber in a way and then replanting that timber that helps promote those things. So we know that we're protecting the environment as we go and that there will be another crop that follows this crop. So we used a large majority of our wood in the LEED rating system. It's 50% of your wood. If you get 50% of your wood in the building as coming from sustainable forest, then you a credit towards that certification. So we have that piece going on. We have local tile manufacturers, and there are a whole host of those around the country that produce tile locally, and they do it in a way that is not damaging the environment or repairing. One of the ceramic tiles in the building is actually made by a local college professor who gathers up old beer bottles and other brightly colored pieces of glass, breaks them, and then casts the tiles and really can do any color combinations. So really supporting local artisans in that sort of way. Same is true with, we're trying to use highly recycled materials throughout the project. So steel is a highly recycled material. Sometimes up to 98% of the steel is recycled or reused. The carpet will have a high recycled content. The tile I mentioned before is highly recycled. So focusing on materials that are provided locally to the greatest extent possible. We use the highest recycled content, try to acknowledge processes that are sustainable in kind of their nature. And there are some that are kind of quirky and catch a lot of interest. For instance, the building insulation is made from recycled blue jeans.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of an eye catcher and a little bit gimmicky, but it gets people's attention focused on what the possibilities are.
Now, I've done some shows on the earth shift, the straw bale building, the cob building, so I know that people really, if they want to go out and they have a piece of land and they want a little vacation cabin or something, there are so many really natural ways of doing that that are very economical. And I've been in some of these structures and they feel different. They just have a sense about them. And speaking of a sense about the building, too, I know that in the Eastern cultures, one of the things I particularly like to walk into a building that's been feng shuied or a home is that concept. That's usually after it's been built. So, whereas if you had the chance to build a building, you might have been able to actually orient how the streets approach it, how people walk in the buildings, where the doors are placed in a way that's very balanced and feels good. But I know once you finish the building, you can take an individual room and then provide that kind of feeling, that sense of flow within that. You already mentioned that. You've got the open space where the people kind of come out of their offices, and even in the natural lighting. And so you're doing it anyway, in the sort of, maybe without knowing it, you intuitively picked up on that. Got any ideas for, the decor or changing anything more that you see as you're walking about the community building that it exists now?
That's interesting. Somebody asked me the other day what I would do differently now with the community building, and I really struggled with what that would be. Part of it, and it has to do with the current building that we're renovating as well, and Rod Butler kind of helped us with that process, is that there was a process that we followed in. We engaged a lot of people, and with our current renovation, we invited city officials, we invited tenant representatives, we invited current building users, and just people from the street and other design professionals, and went through a little design charrette and talked about what the building would be, how it would best fit in the community, and had a couple of sessions like that. And then there's always this ongoing input. And again, it goes back to allowing people to have a voice. So if you listen to all of that and you put all that energy into it, you really accomplish something that has a soul to it. In construction of the first community building, we were very conscious of that. All the workforce was very conscious of that, of what we were building, the type of place it was going to be, and that the energy that we put into it was going to stay in that space. And I think it really has. I think it has stayed there, and I think it has grown and enhanced upon. That starts getting a little spiritual or a little too religious for some people, but it's a place. It's a place where you work. It's a place where you interact with people. It's huge. It's huge. You spend as much time in your office as you do in your home.
Oh, usually more time sometimes. And that is a problem. And you did touch on the spiritual and the soul aspects of really a building. It takes on its own personality, its own character, its own soul, if you would, say that. Its own energy for sure. And people coming and going throughout the building throughout the day that feel good or happy, have a sense of community, enjoy working there, are leaving behind an energy that others can feel as they come off the streets for the very first time. So I think our awareness of that is very important. A lot of people in office atmospheres with typical, political situations that go within an office, I don't think are aware that is an energy that has a residue and definitely has a life of its own.
Well, the second building was certainly one that was sought out by tenants. There are people who were well aware of the community building and had participated in the process and really wanted to be there, wanted to make their life in that space. And I think one of Dave's real challenges was choosing who could actually participate in that community.
Too many.
There were too many people and actually too many good ideas. We could probably do 5 or 6 of these buildings, and each one of them would probably be successful in a similar way and actually in its unique way. So there's certainly room for everybody to do this kind of process and bring these kind of environments forward. There's certainly.
I think you just spoke about a universal law, the law of attraction. You built it and it attracted people that want to have that experience within even a building and a working environment. And therein, lies a situation that we should actually become more familiar with. Can you recount during the process you mentioned how maybe certain people sort of came when you needed them, and you found out about certain maybe products, just sort of, it's that synchronicity, it's that invisible flow of information that can come when you need it or when you're contemplating it. And I bet you some of that has happened.
Well, some of it happens and you don't really identify it at the time. I mean, when we invited people to attend these sessions, I expected 30% of the people or maybe 40% of the people want to attend. I think we had 98% of the people that we invited to attend show up. All of our gatherings where we programmed the building and decided what environmental features were included, we overflowed the rooms every time. The response was really great. That's certainly one instance. Any others you can think of?
Yeah, I think it's been very evident. We had a little groundbreaking ceremony. A number of people that showed up on the street in the middle of July, hot day, that just participate in this. And the quality of the people that showed up, it certainly reinforces that what we're doing is on a good path for the right thing to do. And even within, as we're going through this process, some of the things that we're doing are a little bit outside the normal. But we've had really good response from the city officials and from the county, and a lot of interest and a lot of support there for things that, for instance, we're going to use less water. Well, that might not be in their best interest because they're in the business of selling water, but they're certainly promoting that, saying this is a great idea. And if you can divert things from our sewage treatment plant, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So it's been a very positive experience all around.
I think to build on the fact that, you two are professionals, and yet you're doing something that I believe you can have a passion for as well, which is rare. I believe you probably get up every day looking forward to your day.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm blessed. I just lead a blessed existence. I really do. And I recognize that. I have so many advantages. I live in the Pacific Northwest to begin with. And I could go into all of that, but no, I'm very thankful for who I am and what I want to do. I feel a lot of freedom.
And you're, in a very professional capacity, and yet I imagine by being able to change some of the products, change some of the way things are, added, even the filtration systems for buildings, doesn't that make you feel really good that those people are going to be sitting in those offices and much more comfortable?
Well, about 3 years ago, I made a decision to just not work on projects anymore if they didn't have a sustainable component. So the work that I do beyond the community building is largely related to affordable housing development. So we've been working to incorporate all of the sustainable design aspects into improving the qualities of people's lives, not only where they work, but where they live. So it's kind of a continuum of care, if you will. No, it does make work a joy when you can come in and do the work that you believe is really the right thing to be doing each day.
Now, you just mentioned about 3 years ago you made a commitment to that. Has your business been flourishing since then? Has it taken any downfalls because of that, or actually doing better?
Well, I think we probably had a 6-month time frame where, I was switching from some of the things that I had been doing, but for the last 2 years or 3 years at least, we're turning work away. I can't begin to do things that I'd like to be able to do.
I hear that constantly, that at a certain point in life, especially in people the more mature people like we are, that have probably already spent 20 to almost 30 years working in, maybe other environments, corporate environments that weren't so friendly. If we make a commitment and we make that step, that first step, the universe seems to open the doors, doesn't it? And it sounds like, the universe provided probably unexpectedly some of the funding that coupled with a vision, an idea that maybe had been fostered for a long time, provided for that to happen.
Yeah, I think very much so. what's that thing about opportunity knocking? But you need to be at the door when opportunity knocks. You need to put yourself in that position. And those are choices that you make with your life, how you live your life, where you're going to go, what impact you want to have, puts you at that door.
I think you're working with a great many groups inside the community buildings that are also exemplifying that aspect too, following more of what they feel their heart is leading them to do. And yet at the same time, you're addressing the situation and helping them realize they can't do it with no funding. There's still got to be the balance between the money being provided. Do you act as mentors for some of the younger? I see there's some very young people wanting to be very active. That talk that I attended with the Global Exchange, a 16-year-old was so passionate about wanting to join which group. What can I do? Do you see that with all these young people there?
We do see that, and we've got a system there of volunteers. We're connected with different high schools in town. We have a lot of college students that are either on work study or internships or community service that volunteer within the building. And it gives them good experience. It also it allows us to expand our influence. We're training that next generation and bringing them on board. So we do see a lot of that. And more and more, it just continues to grow. I think Rod had said we could do another 5 or 6 building, and there's no doubt we could fill it. The need is there. It's what people seem to want.
Is there a program that you have interns come in and maybe look at a little different way of doing architectural design that you sound like a wonderful mentor for that type?
Well, we did have 2 interns from Washington State University here this summer that both just left to go back to school for classes start next month. So we did have those there. I have participated as a guest lecturer at WSU 3 times last year, and will be participating in another program this year we brought to Spokane through other groups that I'm involved with, a sustainable education program that really looks at the whole building trade. It's called the Sustainable Building Advisor Program. So this year that program will be in Seattle, Portland, Bend, and a town in Connecticut, in addition to Spokane. So it's really a nationwide program now to train people, and we're going to train not only design professionals, but it's through the community colleges, so there's a large reach to general contractors, subcontractors, because this really needs to be well ingrained throughout the entire construction trades. We have space for 30, and it was announced last week, and we've had a general contractor, a subcontractor, a college professor, and 2 architects. I think it's going to be well received and give us some outreach to the broader community.
Now, as a guest speaker going to these conferences and all, you're talking primarily about the sustainability aspects, and do you feel like you're able to interject a bit of a different tone than a lot of other designers and architects that might be speaking? I mean, you're sort of using that as a little way to get your point across, or your vision across, or what you feel most passionate about.
Oh, I think so. I used to do it kind of subtly, but I've kind of left the subtle behind and become more direct. The city of Spokane invited me to speak about a month ago to a conference they were having for developers, and pretty much on their plate before were all of the dollars and cents and how to do this and that, and I sort of dismissed I was the last speaker of the day, which was kind of interesting. So I told them that, well, we did all of those things that you've just heard about, and those were incorporated in the project, but let's talk about a different way of doing this and different reasons for doing it. And then really expanded about the whole philosophical reasons behind the sustainability piece. So that was an opportunity to get in front of a group of people that are probably normally skeptics about the whole process. But generally, my audiences are people who are coming to hear about sustainability to start with, so they're generally more friendly. So But that was an opportunity to get beyond the preaching to the choir, as the saying goes.
Right. And in Spokane, since I'm spending a great deal of time here now too, would you say, as you traveled around and you both spent time in Seattle, where this is primarily airing, is there a difference in receptibility or conservatism that you see between the two cities?
Well, Spokane tends to not be on the leading edge of trends. It tends to be more reserved and more cautious about how it adopts things. And I think that's the case with sustainability. But when the state passed the law that all publicly funded buildings had to be designed to a sustainability standard that's defined by the LEED rating system, suddenly it became an economic necessity for people who work on public projects, whether they be design professionals or contractors, to become acutely interested for their business survival. And that's really spawned, that got their attention, and I think those early adopters are now starting to look beyond that. So, well, I think Spokane is probably behind Seattle's curve, certainly. Seattle is on the leading edge of sustainability nationwide. I think Spokane is probably in a better place now than probably 80% of the country.
Oh, I would say so too. And becoming, like you said, a demonstratable model where people are literally clamoring and lining up to participate, to become a part of the process, and even to inhabit and to have their groups within the building. So that alone is, once again, a wonderful example. From a standpoint of information and sharing information, I would like for you each, if you would, if you have any favorite techniques or things that you do to maintain a focus, a peacefulness about the way you go about business during the day and working with others, a practice that you might share?
Well, Dave's probably more introspective than I am. I tend to be more overt about the whole thing. I try to sing about it from the rooftops to anybody who will listen to me about it occasionally. But I do like to read a number of publications. There's some things that people might like to get on a regular basis or just on a one-time basis. For the people interested in residential kinds of things, there's really a great book called Homes That Heal. And that book and many you can get from the New Society Publishers. Their website is www.newsociety.com. That will take you to kind of a whole library of books that kind of follow that line. I think that's a good place to start. Even though it's an old book, I think everybody should read a book called Silent Spring, which was written in 1962 by Rachel Karsten, which really started the environmental. She really recognized really the harmfulness of chemical sprays primarily. That's what she picked up on to start with. So, and I think once you've read a couple books, then the whole universe starts to open up as you look at things. There's another great book called Biomimicry, which kind of lays out sort of the natural order of things and gives you kind of a methodology of approaching things in a more natural way. Really, but those are a few of the things. I tend to go back and read some things in retrospective times and try to learn from others.
I would interject Jane Goodall, her latest book, published in 2005, Harvest for Hope. It's a wonderful book, and she's been a wonderful advocate too, a dynamic lady traveling all over the country. Dave, do you have some to share, even from a personal standpoint?
I think from a personal standpoint, aside from books or websites and that kind of thing, is to live each day with intention. For me, it's always the question, what kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of world do I want to create for myself? And I recognize that it's arm's length. That's as much as I can really influence. So I take a few moments each morning as I get up and say, okay, what kind of world am I going to live in today? What is going to be my reaction to people? Am I going to be in the moment? Or am I going to carry other stuff with me? What's on my mind? What affects my mood as I go through the day? So I would say for me the biggest thing is to live with intention. Not always successful at it. You know?
Well, there's some wonderful books along those
Yeah.
lines. One of my favorite speakers is Wayne Dyer. I watch him all the time on PBS, and one of his later books is The Power of Intentions. And it's just a truly powerful thing to utilize in your life if you can, really just, like you said, get up every day and start off thinking of what can I do today to be of service to both my growth, your own individual growth and others, because I do believe that an empty cup doesn't serve anybody, so you get filled up first. Are there any other websites or things that you'd like to mention as we have time to do that? Especially, along the greening of America.
Well, there's some that I have come across websites. There's one called greeninggotham.com, and it has to do with New York and green roof structures, and that's really not something that we talked about here for our building, but we're going to have a green rooftop. We're putting soil medium up there and plants, and so it will be a gathering place, but also something that will help reduce the heat island effect. So I know New York has a program about that, Chicago, a lot of different cities, large cities are adopting this technology, trying to reduce the heat that gets into the building, the heat that's reflected on their city. And
I've seen some of the most romantic situations on the rooftops of New York buildings in movies. And I think what a good use of a big space. We do need more of that. I'm looking out at a lot of asphalt tops right now as we're recording this, and they, plants up there, and it would reduce the heat, so that saves on energy, doesn't it?
Saves on energy. It creates some oxygen. Even if you can't handle the dirt load or the green load, paint your roof white. Reflect
even that.
the heat.
Simple thing. Well, I want to thank both of you, and if there's anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to say, we got a few minutes left to do that. Anything more you'd like to interject on this journey?
Well, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to brag a little bit about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And the more people we can influence and bring along with us, the better we're going to be in the long run. We need to look to our future.
And I do believe that we can start in our own neighborhoods. Is there anything that you both have changed about the way you even have a garden or do things around your own homes? Because that's maybe where most of the listeners can start.
Well, at our house this year, we've got a strip of ground next to us that had been a county right-of-way for a road, and it had just been a pathway. We mowed it and things. This year we decided that we were going to go ahead and plant a garden in it, so created some box structures, raised beds, and I'd called the county about it. I really didn't want to claim ownership of it. I just wanted to use the space. There were a lot of apartments around there. I asked them, I said, can I put a garden on there? Oh, no, you can't do that. You'll be trespassing. Oh, okay, thank you very much. But we now have a really nice garden, and people come through, and it has become a community stopping point. As we're out working in the garden, people come through, we talk, look at this, would you like a cucumber? How about some tomatoes? It has really created community, just being out working in the garden.
Gardening to me is therapeutic. And even when I've lived in an apartment and had just the tiniest of balconies, it always overflowed with plants as well as did my inside. I've managed to grow herbs and a lot of things that I could put in my food year-round, even in the winter, with a few grow lights on my kitchen counter. So I know it can be done. And it just has a wonderful feel to it to, go out and pick a few things that you've grown or have them inside for your air quality. Are there things that you do differently at home or like to do at home when you're home?
Well, we did, thinking about what we did outside, we did plant some bushes to attract butterflies. So we've had a nice crop of butterflies. Certainly tried to get some plants out there to support the quail. We have a fairly large quail population that moves through. So tried to give them a place where they won't be chased by the dogs or the cats, and a place to eat and rest. Tried to increase the energy efficiency of the house. I found that my house was built in a hurry. It was a home show house in '86, and when I was re-roofing it, I found out that they hadn't insulated the roof. They insulated the attic, so how that ever got by the building inspector. But we now have an insulated home.
I'm a big proponent of, just like you said, I'm trying to teach my grandchildren a little bit about gardening and planting. My kids moved in, they've been a year in a brand new development where everyone has to start from scratch, not a single tree, not a single bush. And I'm walking around the neighborhood seeing how well some people are doing with beautiful plants and things, and the hummingbirds are coming, and like you said, the butterflies are becoming attractive because that whole space was wood. And now it displaced a lot of animals. But a few are coming back, the birds and such. But the deer have had to quit eating the lawns. So I want to thank you both. Dave Sanders, Community Coordinator for the Community Building in Spokane, and Rod Butler, member of ZEC Butler Architects in Spokane, for participating in a wonderful vision that I believe if we all can step up to, we'll have a much cleaner, healthier lifestyle, better working environment, better home environment, and just have that sense of community that's been lost over the years renewed on our journey. So thank you for taking this journey with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this journey. Tune in next Friday at 6 p.m. on KXPA 1540 for another hour of tips for the trip. You can contact me on my email, journeywithbrendaroberts@yahoo.com, or my webpage, www.journeywithbrendaroberts.org. Music, technical support, and my webpage is by John Pulling, One Shot Productions. Until then, enjoy the journey.